As an avid player of single-player RPG, spending roughly about 50 hours in Dragon's Dogma 2, I earnestly attempted to enjoy it, but unfortunately it just doesn't resonate with me. Frankly, I find myself rather disliking it. The performance leaves much to be desired, despite adjusting to the setting to their lowest. The game performance remains consistently poor. These issues persist not only in densely populated cities but also in areas teeming with NPCs. Furthermore, the game is plagued with game-breaking bugs that hinder the progression, leaving me railroading for my last in save countless times due to quest failing to complete or transaction yielding no reward. It is a it is an horrible experience, and I can't help but feel frustrated, frustrated, especially given Capcom's involvement. Traversing the world feels excessively laborious, with minimal means of fast travel. Players are left to trek lengthy distance on foot, encountering enemies at every turn, which, which further compound the sluggish pace of exploration. The lack of mount is particularly baffling in a game of this scale, as it would greatly elevate the tedium of travel. The enemy variety is sorely lacking, with with an overwhelming majority of encounters consisting of repetitive gobbling skirmishes. This dearth in diversity quickly leads to monotony, distracting from the overall enjoyment of the game. It is disappointing to see so many enemy types omitted from the first game, Dragon's Dogma 1. The world itself feels shallow and devoid of life. The lack of distinctiveness in city layout and interiors, coupled with a narrative that fails to engage, contributes to an overall sense of emptiness. NPCs lack depth, sporting generic appearances and offering little of interest in their interaction. Features like romance feels forced and superficial, lacking the charm and personality found in other games. Then there is the exploration and questing. This is just my opinion, but these are both functionally a waste of time 90% of the times. The side quests themselves don't have interesting storylines like any big RPG you probably ever played. Certainly, probably I have ever played. The quests are terrible. Here it always goes like escort this guy to a place halfway across the map, or find this item or give it to them. It's a fetch quest, lazy fetch quest that has nothing of worth to do. It's terrible. In my opinion, it's one of the most laziest quest design I've ever seen. There are more interesting stories in unmarked location in a 15-year-old Bethesda game. In fact, Starfield itself have more interesting quests than this piece of garbage. Then there is That's all there is to the side quest themselves. The only quest that stood out to me was the one involving a church in the slums of Vermont. There is maybe a single digit amount of actually useful items and gears then you can get from simply exploring the world, quote unquote exploring, or completing a side quest. And this is largely a fault of the game using linear gear progression. Early Game Gear sucks and the late Game Gear is good, but most of them were found by purchasing from vendors. So you don't find anything of worthwhile in the actual world itself from exploration. There is an objective best weapons and set for every class. Some stuff you did hours long quest to get something obsolete in no time. You're not going to run into some named version of the uh, weapon that function in any special way. It's just going to be a dagger worse than you already bought from vendors 5 hours ago. Of course, I have to address one elephant in the room, the limited fast travel system, and even more so, how many mechanics in this game seem meticulously designed to do nothing but to quite literally waste your time. This game wants you to think that you are Sam and Frodo traveling across Middle Earth to get to Mordor to destroy the ring. When you really more like Sam and Frodo if they got to the Riverdale and turned around and then do this for 5 more times while simultaneously avoiding the exact same pack of orcs. The whole concept of journey and having a prep might actually seem interesting if there is actual interest thing to do, if it was even interesting the first time you do it. This game is nowhere near as dynamic as some clips on TikTok might lead you to believe. If you have actually seen a Cyclops making in the bridge cliff, that is 100% scripted. The Cyclops plays there intentionally. Griffin and Drake generally stays in the set location. Griffin is the only monster in the entire game that generally patrols in the wide area. If most other monsters, even the drakes, just standing there in one spot and sometimes harass the pawn that walks by. Chances are, when you're traveling, nothing very dynamic is going to happen. If you know the spawn's location after the first 4 times you traveled a path, chances are they will be there again. Also, I might add that there isn't anything dangerous when you're traveling along the world. You can't just see a damn thing, so it's even more annoying than tense. It feels like it was a lot more tense in the previous game. It also helps that Dragon's Dogma 1 didn't have camp in every 10 meters that let you change it back in daytime. I will keep the section short to avoid spoilers. But the story sucks. Nothing you do in the first 80% of the story matters. None of the characters matters. The ending just come out of nowhere. It feels like someone watched the Game of Thrones season 1, then just skipped to 8. I didn't expect anything from the story, and somehow I got even less than nothing. They could have at least had 3 or 4 quests of doing nothing and talking to the people in the right time. But there's just nothing in this story worthwhile to mention. There is literally no character worth memorable. There is literally nothing in this story that is worth remembering or have a replay value. In conclusion, I absolutely hate Dragon's Dogma 2? If I'm being 100% honest, sometimes yes. But there are times that everything just clicks together. It can be really addicting to play, despite the endless list of flaws. You can't help but feel that even though game itself is kind of mid. The actual worst part is the wasted potential. But instead we got a game that is same like 2012 game with a new coat of paint, with new added inconvenience, with less vocation and skills, with less monsters, and it's somehow got an even worse story, worse quest system, and no end game dungeons, no new game plus scaling, and no new game plus sports crystals carryover, no difficulty setting, and all wrapped into a game that is somehow four times the larger and more annoying to traverse. I should also mention that there's only four type of armor slots instead of six from the last game. So it's even more dumbed down. The game may be bigger, but it's more dumbed down, even more shallow, and this is just not acceptable for a 2024 game. The standards, it is nowhere near the standards of AAA game nowadays. So I call this game Dragon's Dogma one but better, in my honest opinion. But if I think about it, it's a flat out lie. It's not Dragon's Dogma 1. So it's a side grade. It's not worse, it's not better. It's just Dragon's Dogma 1 with better graphics, with less vocation and less slots, with better. I think it has better uh, customization in terms of character creation. The design of the Beastman is particularly uninspired, lacking the distinctiveness one should expect from such creatures. Their humanoid appearances feel derivative and detracts from the immersion of the game world. The pawn, while intended to be helpful, quickly becomes grating with their indecent chatter and repetitive behavior. Their constant reminders and the lack of subtlety detracts from the immersion and the enjoyment of the game. The combat too feels lackluster, with auto attacks lacking in impact and spells suffering from unwieldy casting times. The lack of precise targeting further exacerbates the frustration, leaving combat feels disjointed and unsatisfying. The user experience within menu is similarly frustrating, with convoluted navigation and a lack of tooltips hindering the efficient gameplay. The map interface is irresponsive and cluttered, further distracting from the overall experience. The lack of meaningful armor customization and modern features only serves to uh, exaggerate those issues, culminating in a game that falls short of its potential. Capcom's response to these concerns have been underwhelming. There isn't much of an uh, game support from Capcom itself, which is underwhelming and disappointing, leaving the game feeling disillusioned and undeserved. Despite its lengthy development cycle, Dragon's Dogma 2 feels like a regression from its predecessors, lacking the polish and innovation expected from a sequel. Ultimately, at its current state, Dragon's Dogma 2 fails to justify its price length, earning a meddling rating of 5 out of 10 in my estimation. Sorry, scratch that. I won't. This game doesn't deserve 5 out of 10. It is a 3 out of 10 game. And the only reason I'm giving it a 3 out of 10 is because the combat is sometimes somewhat fun. Because of its terrible save system with its brain dead AI and its terrible starfit level of quest design and quest qualities, I cannot give this game more than 3 out of 10. So that's it. My final estimation. It is a 3 out of 10 game with a 7 out of 10 graphics. The graphics itself is not that good either. Like Final Fantasy 7 remake has better graphics than this. I don't expect this game to have a good graphics, but for a game that is $70 in price tag, this game does not justify its price tags.